What is up, people of YouTube? I'm your host Vernon. This is Boxcar Cove. Let's fish that. Alright guys, we are experiencing quite a lot of wind this week here in Vegas, especially here on Lake Mead. It's particularly bad. The main part of the lake kind of looks like an ocean with all the waves. So I decided to make my way to Boxcar Cove, having all these little coves that's kind of a bit sheltered from the wind. Our main focus for today is going to be finding some bass. So the next couple of videos here on the channel, I'm going to specifically focus on trying to find some bass as it's the spawn season. I'm going to try all sorts of lures and techniques to try and find some bass on beds. But before we get started, there are some things I want to point out. Spring during the spawn session is a very important time for us as anglers to practice catch and release angling, especially when targeting fish on beds. It is very important to understand that if you're taking the fish out of the water, you're not just taking one fish, you're taking hundreds of fish, because that one fish would have had some offspring. So you are removing multiple fish from the water, so it's very important to put these fish back. Alright, but that being said, I am not a very good bass angler. I've caught many bass in my life, but I wouldn't see myself as an expert on that. So there's a lot of different techniques and lures I want to try out there to see whether I can find some fish, which of course means it's very complicated when looking at the tackle box. I mean, where do you start? Do I start off using a square bill? Do I use some swim baits, maybe some crawls? So it can get quite complicated. I'm going to try and narrow it down and use only 2 lures out there today, but I'll show you the lures once we get started. Alright guys, so I'm going to try 2 lures that are kind of similar but slightly different. On the first setup, I'm going to be using some jig heads with some creature imitations, in this case little craw, using a little jig head, but I actually wanted to use a little Ned rig. I'm going to try out with some Ned rig worms as well as some craws on that as well to see if we can find anything out there. And on the second setup, I'm going to be using a little shaky head with some worms on there, some robo worms, different colors and sizes, to see if we can get any of these bass, especially if they're sitting on beds. Running this through their bed is a great way to get them to strike at it. So I'm going to try bottom rigs, lures down on the bottom. Of course, with the wind, it's very hard to see whether there's any fish around or any fish on beds. So I'm going to cast out there, going to be more feeling for any bites today. But fingers crossed, hopefully we can get something. Alright, so I'm starting off with the little shaky head. The only reason for that is I've had some success with that in the past. Caught 1 fish on that. So I have a lot more confidence in this. What I'm doing is I'm casting it out, letting it sink down, giving it some movement. I have some very cheap gear that I'm using. I have a medium heavy rod and then an entry-level bait casting rod that I'm using on here. And on this I have some 6-pound test, just because I'm using some lightweights on the little shaky head. I need a bit smaller line. Okay guys, bit of an update. Obviously, to conserve some battery power when there's no action, I turn off the GoPro, and that's exactly when I got a hit. The thing was a small bass, but it went for the little shaky head, so it's very difficult for me to put that down. Once I got a hit on that, now I know that they're willing to go for that, but I still have the second setup that I want to try out. So I'm going to switch over to this for a while and then move around the coves to see if we can find any fish willing to go for the lures I have. Now on this setup, I'm using my ugly stick. This is normally a spinning rod. When I'm putting my bait cast on there, this actually works well if you're throwing around some crankbaits. For this type of fishing, it's actually not ideal. It's quite bendable, but I'll make do with what I have. I need to get myself a good worm rod. Maybe get a good flipping rod as well. But maybe someday when I'm nice and all grown up, I'll buy some new rods. Alright, so I'm moving spots. This is a bit shallow area. Let's see if maybe there are some beds around here that I just cannot see. There we go, guys, on the little shaky head. Got a nice big bass. I did not bring my net out here with me, so we're gonna have to boat flip this guy. At least let's get some shots of him. See if we can land him. And there we are, guys. Nice big bass with the shaky head still in his mouth. Quickly want to get this guy on a lip grip, get a measurement of him. Important. Why it's important to have something like a lip grip. That way you can keep the fish in the water, keep him oxygenated. Let's quickly get a weight measurement on this one. Alright, so 1.5 kilograms. It's a 3.3 pound fish. Decent sized bass. Let's quickly get him unhooked. Nice big bass here from Boxcar Cove, showing that even us bank anglers, we can catch some nice fish this time of year. They are coming up to spawn. I think this is a male trying to protect his bed, but let's get him back into the water. Just taking some extra care of this fish because we weighed him and everything. Want to make sure he's fine when swimming off. Nice big mouth. Let's get him back into the water. And off he goes. Straight back down to the hole where I caught him in. So I'm saying I think he's sitting on his bed, protecting his bed, so we're not going to bother him again. That is why I have confidence in this little shaky head thing. When going for a little worm bait, this is a good size bait for these fish. And I'm testing out this new electric color, the blues and purples, seems to be working good. Alright guys, using the little paddle tail swim bait, just managed to land another bass. Almost a 2-pounder. It was chasing around some water birds, so I thought if I go for some swimming baits, maybe it will chase that as well. And we managed to get this little bass. Let's get him back into the water. Sadly my camera was not recording when I hooked the fish, but at least we can get a nice release on him. And off he goes. Like I said, that fish was chasing around some of the water birds. I could literally see him swimming behind it, so I went for a little paddle tail. Alright guys, this is a bit stupid idea of mine, but I'm fishing off a cliff at the moment. I can see some bass down in the water. It might be a bad idea because how am I going to get the fish up this cliff? But I have to give it a try. Have to get my little shaky head down there, see if that fish is willing to go for it. We had one strike it, but I missed. And there we go, guys. We finally landed a fish off the cliff. Now we have to get that fish all the way up here to us. So let's hope the line holds. There we go. Nice largemouth bass. This one caught on the worm. Been jigging it around there, seeing how the fish react, seeing how slowly I have to do it, and I finally nailed my way of doing it, where you have to do it very slowly, just twitching it every once in a while, and they go for it. That's how we caught this one. But let's quickly get this one back into the water. Alright guys, made my way down to the water. Quickly going to release this fish. Just want to revive it a bit. And off it goes. Caught the fish from up there. Had to make my way back down to get that fish safely back to the water. Alright guys, we got one more fish on. This time around, it's a smallmouth bass. Lovely colors on this one. Nice, tiny little smallmouth. Also known as the brown bass because of these brown camouflage dots. Of course, they always seem to have red eyes. Nice little smallmouth, completely destroyed my worm. Let's quickly get this guy off the hook. Alright guys, I did promise we'll focus on some bass. We got a smallmouth bass. That's our second species of bass for today. Not too bad for a novice angler. Nice looking fish. Let's get him back into the water. Gonna get a nice release on this guy. and off he goes. Lovely catching a little smallmouth as well. Of course, using the same baits will work for both smallmouth and largemouth. Lots of fish lost today. Don't know if the others might have been smallmouth as well, but finally landed one. Alright, ladies and gents, I set out this morning thinking that it's going to be a grind, maybe getting 1 or 2 bites. I was hoping to catch some fish, but what a day I've had. It's very difficult to show you guys everything, but the time spent testing out different lures, seeing how the fish react to them, and of course using basic cheap gear and getting 13 fish hooked up. I of course was only able to land 5 of the 13 fish. A lot of them got off the hook. That is because, like I said, I'm a novice at fishing for bass. I'm not used to setting the hook that hard. I'm used to lightly setting the hook so you don't rip the hook out, whereas with the plastics you have to rip your rod basically to expose the hook to get these fish properly hooked. To give you guys an idea of how novice I am when it comes to bass fishing, that 3-pounder you saw in this video, I just have to check, but I'm pretty sure that is a new PB for me. Now, can I guarantee that when you come out here you're going to have the same luck? No, I can unfortunately not, but it is a pretty good time of the year to try and target these fish. The big fish are starting to move up shallow, looking for baits. They're very protective of their areas. It's a great time to find fish. I'm thinking the ones that I caught today, they are males, only seeing single fish on beds, and they're still chasing around the other fish. I'm thinking these are males. I don't think the big females have reached the beds yet. But like I said earlier in this video, guys, if you're catching any of these fish, it's very important to release them. Okay, but I was hoping that it was going to be good spring fishing, getting on some bass, and today did not disappoint. So I want to thank you for following me out here today. Feel free to ask any questions down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button, joining my community, and go have a look and see what other videos I have out there. And guys, feel free to leave a thumbs up on the video. It helps other people see the video as well. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.